quick look. Great. So, Phil, what first drew you to a career in hypnotherapy?
Okay, so it was just a natural evolution, Sharon. I have a long background in providing cognitive behavioral therapeutic type intervention through mentoring and life coaching and just general social work and connecting with people in personal and professional spheres and helping them to rearrange their conscious mind in a way that's going to be beneficial to their health and well-being, happiness, peace, all that sort of stuff. This is something I was doing to myself first and foremost. I started in my early adulthood and young, sort of teens and early adulthood with a very depressed state and never really had huge amounts of anxiety, but deep, deep despair. And so it was very important for me to make a choice as to whether or not I was going to resolve that or not. The choice was pretty much life or death. And I chose life, and then I went through a massive process of self-healing and self-development, and that took many, many years to undo, to rewire, to rearrange, to build coherence through all my subcategories of health, which I can, well, actually, I might just elaborate on that now. Most people think about health as just physical or mental, but I look at it much deeper because it helped me to connect with different aspects of self so that it was easier for me to understand what I had to work on, what I didn't have to work on. So physical, psychological, spiritual, philosophical, emotional, behavioral, intellectual, relational, social. I'm not sure if I said behavioral, metaphysical. There's a whole series of subcategories of health we can reflect on within ourselves. And once we understand where we are at each level to the best of our ability in each moment, then we can start working on how to refine and do the healing, as we were talking about prior to this the interview starting, how to do the healing, the learning and growth that we need to reach our potential in each particular moment. And then once we do that in all these levels, then we sort of build coherence within our system. And for the moment, it never ends. There's no end to this journey of learning, healing, and growing. It never, ever ends. There's no place that we can. A lot of people do stick their flags in the sand, but ultimately, it is a journey of the expansion of our experience of consciousness. It isn't a destination of becoming enlightened. And so, through all of that process, I learned how to take care of myself extremely well, and then went into into career industry to help people in that process. And then, as it turns out, I was realized, because I use meditation a lot very early on do this sort of work, to do the introspection work and connect with myself and do the rearrangement work. There's literally hundreds of types of meditations out there, but essentially what I was doing is just really mindfulness is one way you can look at it, but that's one aspect of meditation as well. But ultimately, I was just trying to connect with what I was through quietening myself to really understand myself, so that then I can do the transmutation or alchemization process on myself to get my neurology, if you want to look at it physically, or the conceptual apparatus in a way that was functional, healthy, happy, and at peace, ultimately. And meditation, I later realized, was self-hypnosis. I was doing a lot of self-hypnosis over the years and not knowing it. And so that's when, once I started to connect with that, I started to understand what hypnotherapy or hypnosis actually was. And it was inevitable that I was going to enter hypnotherapy because it is way more powerful than CBT alone. Way more powerful. CBT, you're dealing with a superficial aspect. You're dealing with the ego, the conscious mind, the sense of self. And I don't look at the ego as a bad thing. The ego is simply the I. There's nothing wrong with the ego. There are poorly designed egos, and there are egos that are designed in a healthy way, or a mix and match of both. And so, but CBT is fundamentally dealing with more of the conscious aspects and how that is shifted through behavior. And it's when it really comes to the true powerhouse of our body, it's the body brain system. It's the heart brain, it's the belly brain, it's the head brain. It is the entire body brain system and how it tunes into its reality and what sort of pulse it's putting out and what's it sort of bring it back into itself. And that is the major driver of our thinking, feeling, and behaviors. So, for example, if I asked you to walk over to your door right now and open it and walk out, you wouldn't think about how you'd have to move your legs, how you'd have to move your arms to reach out, how a door actually works, how a door handle works, how to open it, how to close it, how to continue walking. All of that is unconscious. It's all part of the system. That is what we're dealing with hypnotherapy. We're talking about the automated unconscious responses to our environmental stimuli, including all the stress response system and endocrine system and a whole host of stuff that we're always unconscious of, let alone the stuff that we can be a bit more conscious of, which is part of the subconscious. So I know I'm going on a big sort of loop at the moment.
I'm sure at the end of the interview it'll all make a lot more sense once we've gone through all the different questions. And I think you've already answered our second question, which is, have you ever self-hypnotized? So that was part of your learning process, obviously, and to get to where you are in hypnotherapy today. So it was an unconscious act initially, the self-hypnosis. Would you just like stare into a candle and then wake up and realize that you'd actually put yourself into a trance-like state, or?
No, it was a conscious choice to participate in meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't conscious of it being self-hypnosis until much later.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Labels.
So my meditation, yeah, exactly. And it just, again, once that label helped me to understand that a different process and how to respond to what was going on within myself and how to help other people to understand that within themselves. So it was important for me to eventually understand that it was self-hypnosis, so I can go into the study of hypnosis and hypnotherapy. But yeah, so the unconscious bodily responses to environmental stimuli are extremely powerful. And if the ego or the conscious mind wants to achieve a particular objective or desire, such as whatever it may be, overcoming anxiety or whatever New Year's resolution that people generally fail with, it's because the conscious mind has made a choice, and that's great. It's a more healthy choice to move in the right direction for their well-being, but the body hasn't been changed. And so over time, if they are persistent, committed, disciplined enough, they will send that signal into the body-brain system, and then the body-brain system will adapt and accordingly and become exactly that. And so the conscious and the unconscious becomes married, and they're working in coherence. But it takes a lot of strength and power to do so, and just again that commitment. So that's why ultimately most people fail with New Year's resolutions, and they struggle to make these massive changes in their lives because they're not tapping in to the body and the neurology of the body-brain computer, so to speak. And so that's where CBT, it's great. It's got its place. I'm actually a hypno-psychotherapist. So I do the psychotherapy side of things. I work with the conscious mind, rearrange that, but you need to marry that with the body-brain system if you want to make it an efficient and effective process, and one that's made of less suffering. Because if we're sitting there talking to the same psychologist for 50 sessions or whatnot, and a lot of the time it's not even effective to get the real changes in the system. So hypnopsychotherapy or hypnotherapy, excuse me, will be the go-to therapy one day. The clinical research is super clear on it. It is much more effective than just working with the conscious mind alone. And I highly recommend that people learn meditation, self-hypnosis techniques to work with their body-brain system to change the story of the subconscious, because the subconscious works with emotions or feelings and just the general story, the visuals, the emotions, and the story associated with that process. And working with that is going to make the shifts, the changes that people want so much smoother, so much easier, and so much more pleasurable too.
Yes. Could you give me a moment in between questions? My environment here has changed. I think about 4 people just walked into it, and I just want to give them a bit of a shush. I'll be 2 seconds.
Yeah.
don't know about your environment, Phil, but I have 2 students, a husband home on holidays, and 2 boyfriends all roaming around my house, and they've all just infiltrated in the last 2 minutes. So sorry about that. Anyway, let's kick back off. So do you have a mission as a hypno-psychotherapist? Do you have like a goal? Did you sit down and like myself write out a bit of a business plan, or like what why? I suppose I'm asking you on a
Sharon,
on a global.
can I just interrupt you for a moment? I've just had a knock on the door too, so give me a sec. Okay, sorry about that.
Did you get a parcel? Yeah, I was gonna.
I did.
Yeah, I sensed you had a parcel coming. So, what's your mission as a hypno-psychotherapist? And do you have one? Did you sit down and actually set out a goal? And this can be on 2 levels. It can be a personal mission, or it could be something that you want for the global good.
Yeah, well, I guess it just plays into my personal mission of just following my natural evolution of healing, learning, and growing. Again, I've made my purpose or meaning to life very simple. It's a general direction that I head in. My general direction is how can I best heal? How can I best learn? How can I best grow? That's it. And then more or less, everything's going to fit into that perfectly, because as long as I'm following that, then I'm not going to be disappointed about having specific. I mean, sometimes I have very specific goals. I want this exact thing to manifest or be co-created through the process. But if my general purpose is not to be these specific things in a general direction, then my purpose is always being fulfilled. So I'm always feeling like my sense of connection and just my sense of being is being realized, and so there's no disappointment, and the less expectations I have in my life, the more that I'm pleasantly surprised and really enjoy the process that I'm going through.
Yes.
So for me, that was a very simple way to let go of the need to have complete control of what I'm creating and where in what direction I'm heading. If I can just if I head in that general direction, and if I fall in between that somewhere, fantastic. I'm happy. I'm in symbiosis with what I'm trying to achieve. So when it comes to hypnotherapy, that was just a natural evolution. I'm contributing to hypnopsychotherapy becoming more mainstream. Absolutely. It will eventually happen, but do I look at that as my mission? No, not really. My mission is what I'm doing in my own life. I'm what I do with my writings and my books or articles or presentations or documentaries. Or
they're very inspiring. It's very difficult to get inspiration across sometimes in an article, but you have a good knack for it, and you're also a very good presenter, and you've got a lot of energy on stage, which makes people want to learn about what you're saying. So you're kind of you reminded me of as a young what was that gentleman's name? I saw him once years ago. He's very famous. He's a motivational speaker in the States.
Not sure, but I do appreciate that feedback. That's always nice to hear. But yeah, they're all side things for me. Like that. They're not my purpose. They're not my thing. It's just like
Tony Robbins. Tony
Tony
Robbins.
Robbins.
That's who
Right.
it is. That's who you reminded me of when you were on stage. I saw you a couple of years back now. Actually, it was probably 3 years ago at on a conference on the Gold Coast. I go to so many conferences.
The
Um,
paradigm shift.
that's the one, Paradigm Shift. Yes, it was the very first one of that, I think. Is it still going?
Mhm.
Did you go this year?
No, I haven't been back since then. No.
Yeah, the first one I've been told is the best one. So
Okay. Yeah,
maybe.
I've heard I got a lot of good feedback from that event, so that was always good. Or again, I'm always happy to present and be interviewed and go through that process and put the information out there. But it's not sort of like, I don't feel like it's my mission or my purpose or anything. I'm just living my life. Like, I'm a wild child in general. I have a lot of fun in my life. I put as much um, care into my philosophical and metaphysical evolution as I do with my evolution around fun and expansion of being a human. Like, I want to be a human too, and be on that level. And I just got back from a week of snowboarding. It was bloody amazing. I haven't been there for a few
I'm very
years prior. Yeah, it was great. It was fantastic.
You've
And
actually got a
so
bit of tan around here, around on your forehead, and that.
probably,
So from your goggles, not
yes,
not too noticeable, but
I was a naughty boy. I didn't use sunscreen. Well, I didn't use the right sunscreen anyway. But yeah, but yeah. So there's all these different layers and levels to it all, and I just go with the flow the best I can. Experience the love and lust of life the best I can, and just go with what I am, what I'm made of, and that the whole thing, the whole package is my mission. So hypnotherapy is one aspect of that.
I think because you look at it that way, you come across as very credible and very authentic. So keep doing it.
Thank you.
Which is when I select articles and columnists inside the magazine, I do it pretty much based on how you made me feel at the conference and what came across. And I think apart from, I already had a couple of columnists speaking there, but you were the standout for me. You just had, um, you seemed authentic, and the moment you ticked that box for me, I knew that I wanted to incorporate you with the magazine. So yeah, it's good, and now I understand how you work too. So that makes more sense.
Well, I think that's a really good. Well, thank you for the feedback. I really appreciate that. But also the key word you said there is authenticity and humbleness and genuineness. They're such amazing traits to embody within yourself. And like, I mean, truly do it. Like, truly be authentic to yourself. Face all your shadow, face all your bullshit, face all your truth, your good strengths, your weaknesses, all that process. And that is just so emancipating. It's one of the things that was one of the proper first lessons I activated within my early adulthood and late teens is like, well, who are you? Be real with yourself at the very least. And I spent a lot of time in trying to unpack my ethical uh, signature, like what I truly believed on that level, and then actualize myself around that. And through that process, it was very simple and easy to let go of expectations on myself and others, um, and just um, just be truly honest as to where I was, and that meant I didn't find change a struggle. Change
Mm.
was so bloody easy because I wanted to learn and I wanted to grow. And
Mm.
so if I got confronted with information that was, contradictive to a belief system I might have or whatever it may be, I wanted that. It wasn't like quick reject, quick hide. I don't need to know that information because my identity rests on my belief systems, which a lot of people do. Then it's so difficult to let go of those beliefs. But my identity wasn't about, I need to believe in these particular ways. My identity was, I want to learn, heal, and grow. So therefore, it's like, that's easy. That's my purpose right there. And so change at first is difficult, yeah, but once you really embrace and embody the process, it's easy. It's so simple, and in fact, it's desired. And it's almost like I'm at the point now. Well, I have been for a while. I've said this for quite some time now, which is um, I want to change. I'd get bloody bored with myself if I have to be the same person that I am right now for the rest of my life.
That
and I love who I am, but I want to know, I want to experience myself more. And so, living these different new hobbies and patterns and being around different people and doing different things, that's all fantastic for me. So I really, really encourage it to really embrace the process of change. It's much more difficult after the brain stops developing around 25 or so. And that's why a lot of people get really stuck and stagnant, like what happens to a stagnant pool of water? It gets diseased. If we're not going with our flow and changing according to what is our reflection, what's being mirrored in our lives, then we're going to be in a greater place of suffering, regardless if it's a little bit scary that you might have to be insecure around who your next level of identity or understanding of self is going to be.
Yes, no, look, I completely agree with you. I'm a big proponent of change. In fact, when I was in the IT industry, I was a process analyst, and I'd spend my life going into organizations and cleaning up everything. I'd change everything from their processes to the people to, and there was definitely a high component of trying to change people's thinking. In that, I do a lot of not just teaching the new system that was going to be rolled out, but there would be methodology classes prior and I would implement quite a few techniques to, jazz up the thinking of the people and to kind of knock them around a little bit so that they would start thinking more creatively. And yeah, before we actually got into the actual system rollout or whatever. And a lot of the stuff I did in my IT career, I look back on now and realize I was a change agent for so many people during that 20 years. And which I'm quite proud of. I've even had people come up to me because I used to consult a lot, so I probably worked for, I don't know, probably over 50 companies during my consultancy years. So I have complete strangers still coming up to me in the street in Brisbane and saying, "Oh, we did this, and it was really great because you made me think this way," and whatever. And it's so important for people to, yeah, and you're so right about the rut. And it's not just at 25. People constantly get themselves in ruts, and you do need to change. Not only you, it's not just your physical things, but it is your mental. You've got to jazz up your mentality too. And it's like this year. I've gone back to university. I'm doing a Bachelor of Digital Media, and mostly because I want to start to upgrade what I'm doing, my production status, and I want to start doing documentaries and get the magazine to a point where it's more of an interactive experience than just a magazine. So, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do these video specials. I'm starting to get it into more of an interactive mode over the next few years while I'm studying, and then I want to kick into a full interactive experience for people. Maybe even having some live sessions when the magazine goes live in there, which will be
Awesome.
quite, yeah. But no, I'm completely on board with you on the change stuff. So
I might just interject and add one more thing that with all my clients, I say to them, look, who's the only person that has to really put up with you for the rest of your life? It's you, right? So you're your greatest project. Just look at yourself as the greatest project, the greatest thing that you can create in your life. Do you enjoy yourself? How have you been caring for yourself? How do you have to face the ways that you've been hurting yourself? Like people actually self-harm physically and cut themselves up. Most people cut up their own mind and heart, right? They're just the anxiety, the sadness, the despair, the general lack of contentment and acceptance on the experience of the madness, the magic, and the mystery. It's painful. It's suffering for them. And it's like, well, why do you do it? Why are you doing it? Because you're the one that's doing it. No one else is doing it. You're responding to your environmental stimuli in a particular way. Sure, at the very start, you might have had a traumatic event, or you might have been treated poorly by some people, and you can't control that. One of the greatest things that you can really understand about how to find peace in your life is to understand that which you can control and to let go of that which you cannot control. You can't control the past, it's done. You can't control how people have treated you or how they will treat you. You can influence it. You can certainly put yourself in environments where you're not going to be around people that are going to harm you more than not. you can certainly have manipulation there, but ultimately you can't control the outside world. All you can do is control your response to your outside world. And so if you're being treated in a particular way and you were harmed, that sucks. It's not cool. Everybody agrees with that. But ultimately, if you're going to perpetuate that harm in your own system, in your mind, body, brain system, and energy system, for days, weeks, decades, years and decades after, well, that's on you. That's your choice to perpetuate that self-harm within your system. Once you realize that and take responsibility for that, then you can emancipate yourself. But up until the point, if you're going to sit there and, I call it blameism. I don't know if this is a
Yeah.
thing, but I've called it blameism for years now. People blame the government or the parents or the ex-partner or whatever it is, the general reality. They're blaming it all, putting all the blame on everything outside them, instead of taking responsibility for how you want to think, feel, and behave. If you want to think and feel and behave differently, then you need to reorganize your conscious mind, the ego, in a functional way, and you need to put that into the body brain system and reorganize that in a functional, healthy, and a peaceful way as well. And so that's where all these other techniques, including seeing a hypnotherapist, can help supercharge or make that process much more efficient, because you can change the story of the subconscious very easy. There's just some tips and tricks and tools that you need to do to apply that and move forward. So yeah, and not only all of that, in as much as it's fantastic to want to make the people in our lives feel good about you and the relationship and the communication and all those sorts of things, ultimately you don't know how people are truly. We could lie our way through our entire lives to both ourselves and others, and we could be very, very convincing at it, and nobody would know any different. But ultimately, we ultimately know, even if it's just on an unconscious level, how hypocritical we are, how much we're bullshitting ourselves, how much we're out of sync with our health and well-being needs, and all those sorts of things. So that's where we have to be honest with ourselves and go, right, well, I'm the one that has to deal with myself for the rest of my life. Let's make this the best possible journey I can, regardless of the challenges that I might be faced with in this particular moment and every other moment that comes afterwards.
It's funny you should say that. I have a policy with friends. I allow them to whinge about something to me once. The second time they whinge, I just look at them and say, if you're not prepared to act and do something to fix this situation, you're not allowed to whinge to me about it anymore. And I constantly, whenever I see the same person, if they go at it again, normally it's about a partner or someone at work. And I just say, no, you're not allowed to whinge to me until you fix the situation, and then I want to hear the good side or the bad side, or whatever happened, no matter what, if it's good or bad, I'll hear that. But I won't tolerate just constant whinging, mostly because I think I went for about 20 years of friends just listening and listening, and it started to affect me. It was a very toxic relationship when all you're doing is listening to the same relationship patterns of friends that they're never going to break, and they just keep replacing one bad partner with a similar bad partner, and so one day I just thought, no, all I'm doing here is enabling these people. So yeah, I lost a few friends that way, but now I've got quality friends in my life as well. So it's also a culling technique, which unintentional culling technique, but probably for the best. So anyway, let's say I'm a young,
Can I
metaphysical
just interject? Sorry, just one moment on that too,
Oh, sure.
because this has just been a big conversation in my life recently about toxic empathy. People use it's almost like addiction. They're addicted to helping people, even though they're taking on all this toxicity and nothing's changing around them. It's like
Yeah.
an escapism. Like some people will go escape with TV or whatever it may be to not have to deal with the general reality. And there's nothing wrong with a bit of escapism every now and again. I'm not saying that it's inherently bad or anything. Ongoing escapism to the point where you're not dealing and facing that which you need to within self to evolve self is definitely a problem. But a lot of people get addicted to as an empath, because there's a lot of great empaths out there who literally feel the feelings of other people through the exchange of information on a field level. But they're also, I'm someone who's what I call a rational empath, where I can feel their feelings based on my logical analysis of what they're going through based on my own experience in the past. So I sort of, my electromagnetic field or force field or whatever you want to call it, the aura, it's quite protected. I've got a great defense mechanism up, great philosophical force field. I've caught it for quite some time. So I tend not to let toxicity in to my system. So I won't actually literally feel their feelings. What I'll do is I'll rationalize what they must be feeling and respond on that sort of level. But a lot of people, their fields are broken and tears and needs great repairs. I do this with all my clients. This is a universal thing that I do at the very start, is to at least get your system into a place where you can actually care for yourself. Because if you don't do that, then all this other stuff's going to continue to bombard you, and it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to organize and get yourself more healthy if you don't. But there's nothing wrong with being an empath and wanting to help people and all the rest of it. But I think you've just summarized that so beautifully. Like it's why would you want to repeat this, to go through the same stuff over and over and over again? If people aren't prepared to act on what they've got in front of them as an opportunity, whatever it may be, to change or to make whatever changes internally or externally, then there's no need for you to go through that process. So toxic empathy is a really serious issue, not only because people genuinely want to help, but the way that they deliver that help, maybe they're not in a position to actually do that. It's like the old adage: you can't love somebody else before you love another. You can't respect others until you respect yourself. You can't. I think I said it right the first time. You can't love another until you truly love yourself. Like, it's about you. You really need to understand what you are to really do that elsewhere. And it's the same as helping people. You can't help others to the extent you want to until you've helped yourself to that extent too. So there's a whole process of, if you're a toxic empath and you've got all that stuff within you, you're not going to be able to deliver the service that you want, for starters. But not only that, there's an escapism as well, where some people don't want to face their crap, so they'll do it through trying to help others. And as much as they might be able to help some people in certain ways, ultimately you can never do the great work that you'd want, the great service that you'd want to provide, if you haven't provided that service to yourself. Start with you first and then move out from there, essentially.
Yeah, it's yeah, I agree. So if a young metaphysical person came to you thinking about breaking into hypnotherapy, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, at first I'd say hypnotherapy isn't metaphysical. Two completely separate things. Hypnotherapy is
Or
sorry.
do you see it more as a clinical science?
It is, absolutely it is. Yeah, it's the clinical research on hypnotherapy, on meditation, on mindfulness, on any focus-based state is phenomenally abundant, and it shows amazing results on shifting the experience of the person in whatever way, whether it's thinking, feeling, or behaving. Absolutely, it's part of the natural organization of so-called physics, and physics and metaphysics are like two sides of the one coin. So whilst I said it was separate, it is obviously connected, but you can look at it differently. You can look at it through just a purely scientific lens, or you can look at it through a metaphysical lens, or you can look through both at the same time, absolutely. But when it comes to the mainstream, I would probably deliver the information through more a scientific lens,
Yeah.
so to speak. That anybody could come to me and say, what do you want to do? What the question was, I want to be a
It was, what
hypnotherapist.
kind of advice would you say, yes, this is a wonderful industry, or have you met so many challenges that you might dissuade somebody, or is this an industry that you feel there isn't enough hypnotherapists inside, and the more the merrier?
Oh, look, I guess the more the merrier. The challenge is getting public acceptance and medical acceptance. The most of the doctors I've spoken to, I've gone and delivered presentations to medical practices and spoken to doctors about it, and they've got no idea what's going on. More or less, they've got no idea. They're not
Wow.
up to date with the research whatsoever. Just like they're not up to date with the research with the endocannabinoid system, which receives the
I can,
cannabinoids which come from cannabis, and it's our companion plant, not just on medicinal levels, but also a resource level. These people have been trained very poorly. It's been trained into a particular system. It is what it is. You can't deny it. If you don't know this information, then your training hasn't been adequate. And so that's a real issue. What I would suggest to people who want to get into hypnotherapy, well, first and foremost, get your own shit sorted. Clean out your own nest. If you want to go into a service of helping people, then you need to have some sort of coherence in your own system first, some health and well-being, some at least get your good foundation going, get your philosophical force field going, get your understanding of where you are and what you need to be, and then work with that as you move forward through your training, because there are so many toxic psychologists and other social workers and people that are meant to be helping people. They're toxic. I've worked with a lot of people in this industry over the years, and they're not just physically toxic, really. I mean, go to a doctor who's extremely overweight and get them to inspire confidence about looking after their physical health. It doesn't really exist, right? You got to make sure that if you want to be a health practitioner, that you are relatively healthy. And unfortunately, that's not the case. I've read studies where a lot of psychs go into the industry because of the massive traumas and issues they had in the first place. And have they properly organised them and rebirthed themselves to the level they need to provide a proper service to these people? A lot of the time, no. So going to see a psychotherapist or a hypnotherapist or a mentor or a social worker or a counsellor or whatever, it's hit and miss. And I would dare say, and this might be a little controversial, it's probably more miss than it is hit. I haven't met that many great, health practitioners on that level ever. It's been very few and far between, especially if they don't have a metaphysical mindness around themselves, right? You've got to go into wisdom. You've got to have that level of connection in yourself to be able to help other people. Plain and simple. If you don't know what wisdom is, if you don't know what metaphysics is in general, if you don't have a general level of connection with connection, then unfortunately you're missing out on half the service. You're not going to be able to help them the way that you could potentially help them. So organize yourself first. Well, at least make it a primary focus as you do start going into the study on the rest of it. And when it comes to hypnotherapy in sort of practice, what I suggest is that there's a whole host of tips and techniques and tools that you really need to get an idea of. You need to make sure that when you're actually in the moment doing hypnotherapy, that you've got to have great state control. And state control is essentially you being a hypnotherapist and using your words to ensure that they drop into a deeper level of trance. Or I haven't really spoken about this yet, so I'll do this quickly now. Quick interjection of what trance is and how it works. All of us have been in trance. All of us have done self-hypnosis. All of us have been hypnotized. Every single one of us. Any sort of seed that's been planted when we're a kid, especially, but even in adulthood, is a form of hypnosis. We all use hypnotic language all the time. All of us are using manipulative language at every stage to help to either entertain somebody or to get what we want or to give them what they want. We all manipulate everybody all the time. We're trying to influence people at every level, even if it's just entertainment. I want to provide an entertaining story. That's manipulation. Manipulation doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's a neutral thing that can be used for either positive or negative purposes. So we've all been participating in trance. In fact, you could argue that we're always in trance, just a different level of trance. But ultimately, each and every day, we pop in and out of deeper levels of trances. So daydreaming is a perfect example, or when we're washing the dishes and we're thinking in our own heads about something and we're not really paying attention to the washing of the dishes process. We're just doing that automatedly. The unconscious body knowledge just goes about and does the washing of the dishes, and we're thinking in our head. So that's a type of trance. Another common one is people when they are driving along.
Yeah.
And they totally forget that they're driving and they're thinking in their own head. And then 5 minutes later, or even sometimes an hour later, they'll get home or wherever they get to a new place and they'll go, oh, wow, I haven't even been paying attention to the road this whole time? Did I go through that red light camera doing the right speed camera doing the right speed? Did I go through red lights, or whatever they're thinking? Because you're not aware of it. You're in a trance. You're thinking in your own head at that stage. So we're always going in and out of trances. Daydreaming, another common example. Anything that we've got a focus-based state. So anything that we've got a singular focus, gardening, going for a run, and a lot of therapeutic and developmental potential happens when you actually go for a run, because all this stuff comes up, and you've got an opportunity right there and then to do effective, what I call self-administered hypnopsychotherapy. So what that means is we're always doing hypnosis on ourselves, meditative introspection and rearrangement. It can either be therapeutic and developmental, or it can be the opposite. Most people perpetuate the negativity. So if an anxious thought comes up, they feed that anxiety, and then it gets worse, and you're sending a signal down to the system. That's exactly how you need to think. And so you're basically hypnotizing your body to say, yes, you're doing the right thing. You're thinking negatively, and I'm going to sanction that, essentially. We've got an opportunity to do self-hypnosis every day, all the time, in a therapeutic and developmental way, if we so choose. We've got to learn how to interrupt the pattern of the stuff that we don't want, and interrupt it with a new philosophy, concept, feeling, whatever it is, to move in the direction that we want to head in. So truly understand, going back to the if people who are interested in hypnotherapy, understanding all of that, and that this is a very natural process. We are always in a constant process of either coming to coherence consciously and unconsciously, or not facilitating that process. So we're capitalizing on the opportunities we've got every day to care for ourselves in the learning, healing, and development stuff that I talked about before. If we think and constantly understand that in our experience, we're going to make our lives way more efficient and effective on the journey that we all should be, really excited about. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, Sharon. It's a bit
No, that's great. It actually brought to mind, I wrote a series of science fiction novels back in 2008, between 2008 and 2011, which were published in 2012. And when I was writing the novels, I would drop my kids at school, and then I would go to the local library. And I'd probably sit down at the local library of a computer about 10 o'clock each day. And then suddenly I would kind of wake up, and my alarm would go off, and it was about 2:30, so time to go and get the kids from school. And the library staff used to call me the zombie, because basically I would go to this zone place where I couldn't, and I would look down at 2:30, and I would have typed pages and pages of my book, and I couldn't remember that time at all. Basically, I just felt I was channeling something, and as I was typing away, and the library staff used to say to me, because I did this for about a 3-year period. You see, I'd go in, one day I'd stay home and I'd edit what I had done the day prior, and then so pretty much 3 days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'd be at the library, and the other days I'd be home editing and have the day off on the Sunday. And the library staff got to know me so well. They knew not to disturb me, not to wake me up, because they felt it was kind of like a sleepwalker, like you don't wake a sleepwalker. And so I know exactly what you're talking about, that zone out kind of, I've never had anything that I could compare that to in the rest of my life, except for maybe when you go camping, staring into a campfire, and you get that trance-like effect. But that zoning out for that 3-year period, and that I think it was channeling of some type, or maybe attaching to, I think we call it the Akashic record or whatever. There was something. But I know that when I would check what I'd written a few days later through researching, stuff that I had never known I had channeled. And then I'd find it when I was doing the research, and I knew for a fact I didn't know that when I had actually channeled it. So I think trance is actually, for me, trance, or that zoning, I call it zoning out, to me is actually a deeper experience. It's more of a knowledge. It's like attaching to a knowledge repository of sorts. Is that how you kind of see it as well?
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because when I wrote my book, it was about a 3 week period of more or less the same thing. It's called The Simulation if anybody is interested, which you can see at my website at healbyhypnosis.com. And I felt the same thing. And I feel like it was a combination of my conscious mind and all the information that I'd unconsciously absorbed over the period of my life. So there's some information there, of course, that I wouldn't be conscious of that because it was stored in there. So, well, maybe not stored in there because that's a whole other process of whether or not you're tuning into memory or storing memory. That's a whole other side issue. But it's the capacity to access that information has been ingrained into the body brain system. And so I felt like that was where a lot of my information was coming from. But also at a deeper metaphysical level, the energetic blueprint, or what some people call the soul, the very essence of what I am and is what is the core manifesto of my experience, including time, place, genetics, early epigenetic experiences, everything that sort of happened to me prior to me having some sort of agency or free will in my life and having some good self-awareness, whatever the primary manifesto, what people like to call it, that is a definite driver of that, as well as even going further into spirit and Akashic records and the records of memory and information in the entire construct. Absolutely. So I'd say it's a deep combination of all that stuff. That was, again, it was me just getting the critical faculty of the mind, which is the ego. That's why hypnotherapy works so well, because you basically just your conscious mind, the critical faculty, the logical, executive faculty process of you deciding whether or not you want to absorb this information or not into your system, that's been put to the side for a moment. And you're telling me exactly what you want. You want to be anxiety free. You want to be feeling relaxed, happy, healthy, whatever the client wants. And so do you sanction me to embed that into your system? They're like, yes. I'm like, sweet. So all you have to do is it doesn't matter what your conscious mind's doing. Just I'm going to distract it and hopefully pigeonhole it enough for it to dissipate for a short moment. So the body is completely open to only that information because you've only sanctioned me to embed that specific amount of information. The body listens to that. And so therefore, if I'm saying something that is inconsistent with what you've sanctioned me to do, then your body won't absorb it. It'll go. So that's sort of the process of how it works. Through all of the manifestation of that information, I think it's a weird sort of combination. I don't know. It could be more dominant in certain ways. So you might be tapping into information differently or more or different sources or primary sources, if that makes
It was
sense, on different
historic.
levels.
It was bizarre because I would write something, and then 3 days later, I'd be doing research on something historical, and that is what I had written previous. But I was very certain that, and I mean, I grew up in England. I schooled up until I was 13 in England, so maybe there was a lot of historical stuff I did study in England during that time, which I'm just recalling. I don't know. But I know I went through a lot of epiphanies during that time because I was like, how the hell did I know this? And like I would actually have written names, like very difficult names, like one of most of the characters in my novels basically have past lives. They have a series of past lives throughout time, you see. So there was a lot of historical characters which I drew on. For example, Joan of Arc. And some of the character names, they were French, very difficult to write or even to spell. And I would have them perfectly written or typed. And then when I went to do the research on that particular, era to get the environment to build into the book, the novel, I would actually find the same names of the people at the time.
It's
And
amazing. You could have even been tapping into the field of some of your friends who already had deeply ingrained that information to the system. So there's all these different layers of it. Absolutely. And
it blew
that's
a few times. There was a lot of epiphanies during that 3 year period while I was writing that, and I stopped trying being surprised at things like that. I just started to accept after about the first year of it. I just started to accept that this is just how life is, and I up until then I think I hadn't really understood what the Akashic record was, and but now I'm a firm believer that it explains a lot of the reasons why two people in different parts of the world have the same idea, develop it, and put it to market at the same time. That's what I think. There's an infinite amount of ideas and an infinite amount of information out there, and all we have to do is that connection, either through meditation or some type of zoning, or, as you say, I don't know about mindfulness. Mindfulness to me is meditation without the spiritual connection, but maybe I'm looking at that from the wrong perspective. I don't know. Every time I've tried to be mindful, I've ended up like not going very far with it, because I don't know. I don't try. To me, it's just being present in the moment. That's how I see mindfulness. But every time I try and explain that to somebody, they tell me I'm wrong. But to my mind, I don't know. What is
mindfulness to me is simply being mindful about what is going on in the activity of who you are. I wouldn't say it's being present. I would say it's going internal. So it's about, mindfulness is about actually getting to know yourself, actually understanding how you operationalize yourself, your thinking, your feeling, behavior, and becoming mindful of what you actually are, your energetic frequencies, your more dominant signatures, everything that makes you what you are in that moment. You try and be as mindful as you possible as you can of that, so that you can change it according to what you want, essentially, right? So, and also being mindful of the subconscious stuff that's been driven through your thinking and feeling behavior, as well as mindful of the energetic, the core of what you are, what that's trying to push through you as well. And then you use that information how you want, essentially. You're just becoming mindful of it to do something with it. Yeah. But going back to, as far as I understand, it's one of 8 pillars of Buddhist. I can't remember the actual concept right now, but it's one of 8 ways of becoming more conscious and in coherence with all the layers of self, essentially. But yeah, going back to before, and this is why the mystery that you talked about before, who knows? Who exactly knows where that particular bit of information from that particular chapter and this particular moment came from? It could have come from all these infinite types of sources. We are all part of the one field. That's exactly how it works. We are all one. However, we are also individuals. We're also different. On one level, it's true that we are the one thing, and it's also true on another level that we are individual snapshots of that infinite conscious, or whatever words that people like to explain that as, right? So there's this coexistence of what you think might be contradictory, but no, if you look at it through the right lens, you can see how it all coexists symbiotically in a nice, beautiful, harmonious way. And that's what we were talking about earlier before you press record or start the interview, is that the mystery component is just so important. The more the people that an individual can accept the mystery of life, the more humble they become, the less they can hold on to expectations, and the more they supercharge their experience of the learning, the healing, and the growing, because we ultimately don't know. We've got this construct, and it's great that we sort of get to know some facts and figures and stuff in the construct and have experiences and have experiential knowledge and transmute that into wisdom in behavior, etc. That's fantastic. But ultimately, where this construct is, at what time and time and space, probably not the best way to describe it, but the
I thought you were about to say timey-wimey then.
Sorry?
I thought you were about to say timey-wimey out of
timey-wimey. I'm not sure of that. Yeah. No, I've never heard of that. But yeah, so the context of that construct is what I'm saying. We don't know where the context of that construct is. So it's great to know stuff in this, but ultimately everything is, a massive portion of this experience is a mystery, and we don't need to know. It's not important for us to 100% know the fact of exactly where that bit of information come from. It doesn't matter. Just as what we do with it, what's important really at the end of the day. And one more quick note, just on something that most people will relate to, is that the most common trance is the TV trance, zoning in or zoning out in front of the TV, and somebody yelling in the background, "Dinner's ready," and no one can hear because they're totally absorbed into that experience. Which is why advertising works so bloody well, because the critical faculty is put to the side. It's sort of to a little bit, you're still engaging in the story and whatnot. There's still some thinking and processing going on, but ultimately your body is really open to the information that's coming through the TV, which is why billions upon billions upon billions of dollars spent on advertising, because it puts suggestion into the system, and later on that suggestion will come up as, I think, you know what, I think I really do want that particular type of car. I really want that. And people feel that's the free choice. But in fact, it was a suggestion put into the system whilst they were tranced out watching TV.
Yeah. Don't get me started on TV. I haven't watched it for about 10 years. I do a little bit of Netflixing now and again, but the majority of I spend a lot more time now on actually YouTube. Although I suppose you could say that's kind of the replacement TV, isn't it? So maybe.